Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us for the show.
Well, thank you, Jordan.
So you're like us. You're a fellow East Coaster. How you doing with the snow up there? We're kind of buried down here right now.
It's not too bad here. The snow seems to have stopped, and my wife did some shoveling, and we had our neighbor actually shoveled our walk. We have a brownstone, and the neighbor next door, the people actually they're working on the workmen for the last 2 snowstorms. They've been kind enough to shovel our sidewalk.
Oh, we've got this like weird snow that's like that fake snow from The Shining that's all powder dusty that I didn't think was real until today.
Oh, that's great. That's great for skiing.
Yep. Yeah, it would be.
Unfortunately, where we live is super flat, so there's no there's no room to ski, but it is perfect. Yeah. So how is quarantine been treating you? I guess is my immediate question. Like
I'm old and I've got all sorts of fucked up things. Sure. So my wife and I are basically lockdown, serious lockdown since the beginning. We opened Mutant Blast in L.A. and after advertising and a very good theater chain, we had 2 very good theaters, and then the day we opened, they announced that the next day we locked down in L.A.
Oh,
so,
wow.
The director of Mutant Blast, who came in from Portugal, and the star had to run back to Portugal, and I had to go back to New York. So,
well, hopefully you've been able to like spend more time at home. Maybe you guys have just been spending time together, watching movies. At least, maybe hopefully using the best of your time.
Yeah, I'm married. We're married. So,
but you guys both have very busy schedules.
The commissioner is retired. She produced hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm with Justin Martell and John Brennan, both of whom rose up from my assistant job to producing movies.
Yeah, and we just had John on the show.
Oh, yeah? Oh, he's the best. Did he sing?
He didn't sing.
You know what? We didn't make him sing a song, but he had a bunch of great stories. He actually said that one of his highlights of his career is filming one of the scenes for, I think it was Return to Nukem High Part 2 in your house, and he was complimented by your wife on his version of Goodbye Horses.
Yeah, he told us an amazing story about that.
Wow, well, both he and Justin are princes. They're great. And his John's record is coming out. His Last Drive-In record is coming out through Justin's company.
Oh, that's Justin's company. I didn't know that. I know that a lot of your guys, people with Trauma and Joe Bob's people are they're back and forth a lot.
I think there are 8 of his crew, of Joe Bob's production crew, 8 of them, and it's not a big crew, are all Trauma alums.
That's awesome.
The art director was the production designer on hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm and makeup. And Justin said there were 8 or 9 Trauma people. So when I went on the show, it was like a Trauma homecoming. It was great.
I'm sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that was a really special episode too.
From everything that I've read and everything that I've seen, man, one of my favorite things about Trauma is that everybody does everything.
That's kind of true. Yeah. I mean, even James Gunn, who wrote Romeo and Juliet and worked for us for a couple of years, but he says he channels me when he's directing one of those. Whatever happened to James Gunn?
I think he's making some space movies these days.
Oh, yeah.
Some superhero movie.
That's right.
The kids love the space movies.
I don't think it did very well.
Well, he's a great guy, but he made a big speech to about 3,000 people on the set for both Guardians of the Galaxy, and then later I have a walk-on in his Suicide Squad.
Oh, cool.
And he made a little speech to both a big, huge crews. And Guardians had about 3,000 people there. And he said, this is my first boss. And even though I'm making $200 million movies, I channel him because I want to be a responsible producer. And I want 3 rules of production: safety to humans, safety to people's property, and make a good movie.
Yes.
And, it was quite nice.
And I've always loved that philosophy that you've held onto with Trauma, because, objectively, people can look at Trauma from an outsider's perspective and it looks like chaos, right? That it's just madness on screen. But when you take away that and you look behind the scenes, you see that people put safety of people's health before everything else. So, you haven't had the big major mistakes that a lot of these other people have, because you guys are actually caring about the human beings who are making the movies. Well,
it's only a movie. You know, just be awful if, these big movies, people die. right? People die. The Allman Brothers movie, a poor young woman was run over by a train, basically.
Good Lord.
They went on the tracks to film something without permission down in Georgia, and the train came, and they couldn't get off the tracks quite fast enough, and the train hit the camera equipment, which hit the woman, very young, and that was the end of her. I mean, I couldn't live with that. I'd be
the one that we always kind of go back to is John Landis.
And right.
Twilight Zone movie, yeah.
And that speech that he had the balls to make afterwards at the funeral, saying that he lives forever in celluloid. It's like, okay, but he's dead in reality, though.
And 2 children too.
Yeah,
of course. The level to which Landis was tone deaf after that happened is sort of staggering.
Yeah, they made it. They got here. They escaped the Vietnam War in a boat. Came here and bingo.
Yeah, but couldn't escape John Landis. We love Troma for not only just caring about people, but also for being sort of a voice for the rebellious side of filmmaking. And I even think like the fact that you're in New Jersey and New York and not LA is sort of a fundamental statement of sort of that rebelliousness early on. Everyone else worships the West Coast and you guys are saying, fuck it, we're setting up on the East.
Well, the whole idea was to, Michael Hers and I wanted to set up our own damn movie studio so we could make movies without anybody telling us what to do. But of course that limits the budget, and hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm was, $500,000, and it's a $50 million movie made for $500,000.
Sure.
Yeah, less than $500,000, and it's hell to make. But by now, after 47 years, the people who join us are really into it. 35, 40 years ago, we're a 47-year-old company.
Right.
So initially, I was the same age as the actors, and they didn't quite buy my act. They were thinking, why aren't I directing? And this guy with the big nose, why isn't he playing the clown? And me. But as I got older and sort of known, at least in the underground, now people are really, really 100%. We have a line around the block when we're casting, and people, really devoted to the movie. And I would say hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm really the most devoted casting crew you could possibly imagine. And they went through, pretty rigorous. We had 18, 20-hour days.
Yeah.
I mean, they were living basically on the set or next door to the set, and sleeping on the floor and learning how to defecate in paper bags and all that kind of stuff.
Well, do you think that maybe the fact that people like James Gunn have come out of Troma is a lot of the reason that, that right there is, I don't want to say rags to riches, but that's indicative of like what that kind of hard work pays off to, right?
Because Troma's kind of a proving ground in that way, right?
Yeah.
If you can't hang, you can't hang.
We're more of we're sort of like a backwater breeding pond for big fish,
big mutant fish.
Yeah, I was going to say some weird ass fish, but yeah.
But Samuel Jackson's first movie, we made all black movie way before Shonda Rhimes and the guy down in Atlanta who's Tyler.
Tyler Perry.
Yeah, when we were white guy, 2 white Jews. We put in $400,000 to James Bond III's Death by Temptation, which we're still distributing, and also Bugged is a black movie, and we've got 2 or 3 others that we distribute way before this whole. Spike Lee, I think, really. Is a genius.
We were talking earlier about how you guys have always sort of been on the vanguard of inclusivity.
Well, also we like the underdogs. We had women directors before it became, before the hashtag Me Too thing, and all of the movies I've done since my movie that I made at Yale, The Girl Who Returned, they're all female. Every movie I've done. I mean, I should be up there with George Cukor as a great woman's director. They're all about empowering women.
Yeah.
Squeeze Play is about the women's liberation movement. Waitress is a women's identity. Stuck on You is palimony. Toxie, it's his significant other who's the strong guiding force. Return to Nukem High is a lesbian sci-fi picture, and also the second volume, the same. So thank you for paying attention to us. But I think the people who work for us over the almost 50 years, they usually say the exact same thing, that when I get hit by a bus, suddenly, the New York Times will say, oh, he was, left a huge footprint, 7 books and Trauma Now and discovering all these people and creating the Toxic Avenger. And the Toxic Avengers, I don't think there are any superheroes who are in every single medium. Coloring books, comic books, a Broadway musical.
Somehow a children's cartoon on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
I grew up on that cartoon.
There you go.
That was one of my first cartoons ever, and I am very thankful for it.
And I don't know whose idea, maybe Lloyd, you can tell us, whose idea was it to take a movie in which people run down children for points and turn it into a Saturday morning cartoon for kids?
Michael Hers and I still kind of trying to figure that one out. It was one of those manna from heavens thing. The toy company, Playmates, thought that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was going downhill, and they wanted an environmental superhero.
And kids were already used to their superheroes living in the sewers, so they wanted another sewer-dwelling hero, maybe for the kid.
He lives in the dump.
Kids love trash.
So, but obviously they hadn't seen the movie, and
right.
Sure. They hadn't seen the guy's head get crushed by a weight.
Yeah, exactly. And rolling over the kid's head, and then backing up over it again. Even my father couldn't get over that, and. So, we got lucky. Toxies had baseball cards. I don't think there's any other superhero, even though Toxie's totally underground. Mm-hmm. But he's a big influence on Deadpool. Those directors talk about the Toxic Avenger all the time.
Absolutely.
They talk about trauma and how we, in the 70s, we had our actors every once in a while turn to the camera and break the fourth wall, and we got a lot of shit from people for it. But later on, it became fashionable. Bertolt Brecht did it. Bertolt Brecht did it. Thornton Wilder did it. But, these stupid critics don't get it. But now it's very fashionable to break the fourth wall. And Deadpool did. And those 2 directors. I've never met them, but I understand they big fan of Toxie and Trauma.
And even all of the comedy on Adult Swim these days on Cartoon Network, right? That absurdist comedy, that's mixed with this ultra violence, right? That there's the comedy and the violence are indistinguishable. That goes back to Trauma.
And we go back to Chaplin and Three Stooges and Chaplin and Tom and Jerry and Keaton and, comedy and violence, cartoon violence. So not
cartoon violence, exactly, yeah. Which I feel like that's what a lot of people maybe didn't get, is once they saw cartoon violence happening to not cartoons, they were confused. Like in war, how many you had to go through 1,000 cuts to bring that down. But what's the line? Is it the big goofy teeth she's spitting out? Is it the bullet holes that look realistic? It's the one thing or the other.
Well, we had a lot of trouble with that one because in those days, the Motion Picture Association of America could destroy your movie. Because the only way you could get into theaters, and in those days we could get between 500 and 2,000 screens with a movie like Waitress or Stuck on You or even Toxic Avenger. They took out the U.S. MPAA took out 20 minutes to give us an R rating, whereas in Canada they took out 90 seconds. And in France, they took out only 30 seconds. And in France, they permitted 13-year-olds to watch it. And then with Trauma's War, the head of the MPA told my partner, Michael Hers, that the movie sucked. And they're not even supposed to tell you that. They're just supposed to do their business based on community standards.
A simple no thank you would have sufficed.
Well, Die Hard came out before Trauma's War. Right. And we looked at that to cut our R-rated version. And and our stuff is cartoon violence. It's goofy.
Yeah, Die Hard's, that's real violence.
We're having the same thing with hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm. The shit films getting into a lot of these film festivals, the gatekeepers are scared. They don't want to play the movie. They're scared of it. It's because it's not woke enough.
What does that even mean? Because as we've discussed, what I love about what you guys do is you're able to put these subversive messages in movies without being preachy and not making it the plot of the movie. It's just part of it, right? And I know I haven't had a chance to see Shakespeare Shitstorm yet, but you guys are dealing with some of the opioid epidemics going on right now. So You're absolutely dealing with hotbed political issues.
Well, who discovered South Park, right? We. right? They were huge Troma fans. We're the ones who helped them finish. They took what they had shot of Cannibal the Musical to us first because they were fans, but we didn't. They wanted to pay, a big advance. We don't have any money, so we told them go to all the big companies and to come back to us if you don't make a deal. And of course, the big guys, the mainstream, are too stupid to get how brilliant Cannibal the Musical is and still is. We helped them finish it, and it's one of our most successful movies, a musical about cannibalism. Today, it seems almost
it's almost tame.
Yeah, exactly.
Only cannibals? That's all you have?
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting that you bring up South Park because those are two guys that are very clearly influenced very much by Troma.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like they are probably the first generation of kids that grew up entirely on Troma.
Well, they're the first to admit that the first couple of seasons are heavy. You look at the cartoon effects are very similar to our, and it's clever because it's much, as you just pointed out, much more acceptable to have this people's arms being ripped off in cartoon. And Kenny getting killed and squashed and rats eating him. Whereas in R-rated movies in 1985, we were getting slaughtered by the MPAA for the same, like you said, the punch in the woman's mouth with the chiclets. She basically spit out chiclets. We had to cut it out. Maggots. We had to cut out maggots. Yeah, it's absurd.
And how many times have we seen the same thing happen with Tom and Jerry, where he hits his head and then every single tooth falls out? It's the same gag.
And if anything, to me, cartoon violence in cartoons, like in Looney Tunes and in Tom and Jerry, is so much more dangerous in the sense that like there's no real consequences represented in it, right? Like you drop an anvil on Wile E. Coyote and he accordions out, but then he's fine. Like at least in Troma movies, when somebody's head gets chopped in half,
you don't see him
blood
again.
Spurts out and they're not getting back up.
You don't see him again. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I based everything I did whether or not the cartoon survived it first.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I would do it. So you brought up hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm. I'd love to talk more about that. Is it still doing festivals right now?
Well, it was a little too much for the stuff that's in South by Southwest is acceptable. You know, it's very safe, PC, whatever.
Yeah.
Can we expect a release on Troma Now?
Well, first theaters, then Blu-ray, and then Troma Now, I think.
Okay, cool.
And we're doing we're preparing now a 2-disc Blu-ray, and there's a rumor that a certain drive-in movie host might do a commentary.
Ooh.
But, luckily, nobody's listening to this, so we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about spoiler alert. Yeah.
One thing that John Brennan said to us is that you felt that hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm in some ways summed up your entire career of filmmaking.
He's correct.
And so it seems you have a really strong attachment to that film, and I'd love for you to maybe talk a bit more about that.
Sure. Well, The Tempest is my favorite Shakespeare play. Mm-hmm. And I would have done it when we were making Romeo and Juliet, but I wanted to wait till I could really feel Prospero. Prospero is an old man losing power, being banished. He's banished. I'm old, losing my faculties to some extent, but I'm banished deeper and deeper and deeper into the reeds of the underground. You look at what was going on in the 70s before the major consolidation of the media under Clinton, who destroyed the chance of independent art to get on television unless you go through one of the cartel. So I'm more and more down into we're the last man standing. There are no other independent studios of any merit, of any longevity. So I feel Prospero. Also, he's a magician. I make magic movies. That's magic. And the daughter thing and the romance, it's and so I waited till I was this age, and I portray Prospero, and it's a very personal film, and also the two major themes. Although there's a lot of satire, the fact that since my wife and I have been married, which is as long as Strom has been around, every morning there are nonstop, almost 50 years, because I didn't watch TV before I got married. For 50 years, every morning from 6 till God knows how long, while the children are eating their obese making Fruit Loops.
Obesios.
For Obesios. There are ads for drugs. Mm-hmm. It's institutionalized. And then everybody turns around. What? How is it possible we have 50,000 people hooked on oxymoron? OxyContin. Right? They're playing with the kids from the time that the 3 generations of this. So that's one of the big themes. And then the other big theme is, one is anti-big pharma and the abuses thereof. And the other one is this Twitter hate and Twitter bait and censorship and cancellation society. Mm-hmm, but it's funny as fuck. It's very entertaining. It's it's like Poultrygeist.
That's one of my favorites. Like
Shakespeare, it has 4 songs in it, but it's extremely dark, hilarious satire. And I've seen it with a full audience because we had 2 or 3 test dates before COVID. As we were filming, as we were editing, we bring in one. I did a focus group at the USC, University of Southern California. And they had a huge theater with people. And the audience was just having the best time. And then in NYU, we had another one, focus group. Mm-hmm. So with that, and then we have the audience fill out, 1 to 10. What did you think of this movie? Do you like the title? Who's your favorite character? Anything we should cut? Sometimes I take their advice and sometimes they don't. But audiences had a great time. And the Q&As would, I finally had to go home. We had 3 or 4 of these focus groups. The audience was really engaged. They were really interested. Yeah, it was. Sure. It really was awesome. It was great.
The trailer looks like a ton of fun. It just looks colorful and crazy and slimy, and I'm just excited to see what the hell's happening in this movie.
Well, I hope you'll enjoy it.
I'm sure we will. Rewinding years and years and years ago, you've been quoted as saying that it was you mistakenly went to Yale University. And I understand what you're saying with all of that, but I wonder how much of that time at Yale do you embrace as some of the fuel for your rebelliousness in film? I mean, if you didn't have, say, the structures like Yale, and do you think you would have been as rebellious with your filmmaking?
That's a great point. Actually, there's no doubt about it. Yale changed my life because I did not enjoy it. I can't. In fact, I really disliked it. Well, actually, the current Yale, the ultra woke Yale, is what pushed me over the line to make #Shakespeare's shitstorm.
Sure. Really?
I don't want to bore you with it, but there's some stuff going on there that's insane. They figuratively lynched a Nobel Prize the kids. A Nobel Prize winning scientist who also wrote a best-selling book, professor. And the administration published a letter telling the students how to dress for Halloween. Don't wear a Mexican hat. Don't wear a Chinese costume. Elmo, where's Elmo is acceptable. And the wife of this brilliant scientist is a superstar professor, great guy. You couldn't have better. She wrote an open letter saying, administration, it's kind of weird. We think the Yale students, who are supposed to be the smartest in the world, can pick out their own Halloween costumes.
Sure.
But Yale has hired more administrators than, and they've hired fewer and fewer professors. There's video. If you go online, you can see a really horrendous video where this professor tries to reason with a mob of these students, and he wants to have an intelligent, nuance, they call it. Sure. We used to debate each other in high school.
A debate, yeah.
They wouldn't let him talk. They just kept screaming at him, and it was they don't want a university. They want a home. Mm-hmm. That was literally one of them said that. I want a home. I just want a home. I don't want to, oh my God, the poor guy. So he quit and the wife quit and that was the end of that. They lost their, but they got some nice, they got plenty of administrators now.
Wow. I
gave Yale $15,000 for my 50th reunion, which was last year. And my class, the guys in my class were great. If I didn't like it, it's my fault. Well, anyway, now that we're about to die, the university's contacting us. Hi, Mr. Kaufman. You think you'd have time to, I'd like to take you to lunch and you know what they want to do? They want you to stick them in their will.
Yeah.
So I wrote a note back saying, hey, you lost me with, go look at that video. And, I kind of said in the note, you lost me. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't getting another 15 times. I guess on my 100th reunion.
Yeah, there you go. Reevaluate another 50 years. See where they're at.
Maybe they'll clean it up by then.
I give it to I sent money down to the food bank in L.A. during the fires. I just sent a little money to Texas. I'll spread it out to people who really deserve it. Right. Animal rights.
Sure. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about or talk to you about is I read or I saw an interview with you where you said that when you left Yale to go to Chad to become a Pathfinder for the Peace Corps, which first of all is badass. Well, I think what's so inspiring about your path in that regard, to me at least, to me personally, what's so inspiring about it is that, like you said, we exist in a time period right now in society where woke culture is more of a problem than it is a help, right?
Yes.
It's more of a hindrance at this point. When I see people like yourself speaking real truth to that and saying, okay, like if you want to be woke, go put yourself in a culture that you know nothing about. Go live there and learn about it. That's and maybe broaden your fucking horizons a little bit instead of just being a warrior from behind a keyboard.
Yeah, good point.
And I think you see that. I think we can all see that attitude represented in trauma and what trauma is and what trauma has done. You know what I mean? It's always pushing boundaries, always saying like, yeah, I want to make you uncomfortable because that's how you grow.
Yeah, and trauma's always taking people out of their comfort zones, no matter what that might mean.
Well, the whole idea is to give them a ride in the cinema that they've never taken. People who go to see a trauma movie, they know they will love the Toxic Avenger, or they might hate Romeo and Juliet, but they know they're never going to forget hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm. They will have an adventure in the movie theater, and they'll have some emotion. It won't be baby food, and unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is baby food.
And whether you hate it or you love it, they're going to remember it forever.
Yeah, exactly. And it's years later, people say that they still recovering from having seen Class of Nuke 30 years later.
Right, but that's really what makes art, right? Not whether it's good or bad, whether or not you remember it.
That is absolutely correct. Sure. No question about it. Van Gogh, nobody bought any of his paintings.
No, fuck no. Right? Not until he was, 50 years dead.
Yeah, that's right. And Picasso, on the other hand, was a big success when he was alive.
Yeah.
So, you never know. So, in fact, Marcel Duchamp, he signed a urinal and hung it up, right? And the last time I looked, which was probably 20 years ago, one of his urinals was $400,000.
I think after he hung one of his original urinals, decades later, a man came into the museum with a sledgehammer, right, and bashed that urinal to pieces, saying that Marcel Duchamp would have wanted it that way.
Ah, that's interesting. That is Dada. Yeah,
exactly. That's Dada, baby.
When they hung that urinal up, Marcel Duchamp was well hung. Let me tell you.
Well, and here's another question I have, just because I'm curious about. You said you love Shakespeare.
I do.
I also know, just from watching myriad interviews with you and diving into it, you were raised more on theater than movies, right?
As a kid, yeah. We had I can't help it. I apologize, but I'm a bourgeois all the way, and I've been.
There's nothing wrong with it.
I can't deny it. On the other hand, I had a grandmother, Grammy Kaufman, who was way left wing, and she had freedom, civil rights reverends that would stay with her when they were up in New York. They were marching down south, and she'd give them antiques so they could sell it. And she had some big pottery, Ming dynasty. She had, I don't know if they were real, but these giant plates on the wall, and she said she gave them to them so they could get some money to support the movement and all that. And she, anytime she said the word Richard Nixon, she'd literally spit in the rug.
Ding.
Excellent.
So she had big influence on my.
I was gonna say clearly you come from good ilk.
Big influence.
That's all I'm saying.
But basically, I had everything I could ask for. I had really good schooling. Read a lot of books. saw lots of countries, traveled a lot as a kid. In fact, I grew up with Oliver Stone. We went, when we were old enough, we were in Paris on our own. We both spoke French. I think it may have been the first time I got laid was with him in Les Halles, which was the meat market, which would operate 24 hours.
So the first time you got laid was in the meat market with Oliver Stone.
In Paris. He was a little more advanced than I, if I remember. But we grew up together from second grade on. And then it was not terribly good for me. But then Africa, I had that was basically my maturity, my sexual awakening was really Africa.
And what better person to have that be in tandem with than Oliver Stone?
Yeah. Well, our folks were very, very tight. And sure. He and I grew up together. And then just as he became very famous, of course, I managed to move away from him. He's a nut, but a brilliant. I mean, his movies, but I discovered him. His first movie is The Battle of Love's Return, which is my first sync sound feature-length movie after I got out of Yale. He's got a little cameo, and he worked on it and caught the bug. And turns out he's a major talent.
Yeah, it turns out he's pretty good at it.
I don't think any of our listeners would disagree with the idea that he is both incredibly talented and nuts.
When he was young, he and his dad were very right wing, like
I believe that.
Kind of Proud Boys type.
Yeah.
And and then he went to Vietnam. He was a hero in Vietnam, a genuine hero. He got wounded. Not seriously. I think he got some shrapnel in his ass. But I saw he was a genuine hero. He rescued some people. I remember seeing a certificate in his apartment that was, serious stuff. And
I think you just described the plot of Forrest Gump.
No, he's read a lot. I hate Forrest Gump. That's a hateful movie. That and Pretty Women I think are hateful. Forrest Gump is basically a model for us to follow orders, be retarded, and you will be rewarded with a major. Don't do any thinking. Just follow orders. And is the girlfriend named Jenny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I came out of it saying she gets punished because she's trying to fight for women's rights or assert herself, and she's punished by getting AIDS. So anyway, I find that very disturbing, that movie. And of course, Pretty Women. I have 3 daughters, and we were on an airplane. They're about 5 years old, I think, maybe 6 and 4 and 2 or something. And they showed the movie on the airplane, Cinderella horror. Wonderful.
Yep.
But you certainly can't show the TV version of Class of Nukem High. Oh, no. No. Or Monster in the Closet.
You mentioned a minute ago one that you spoke French, and a bit ago you mentioned that you speak a good amount of Mandarin. How many languages do you speak, Lloyd?
That's it.
That's
English.
It, okay.
I speak English.
English quite well. You're good at English.
Pretty good, yeah. But, Michael Hers and I are both very well educated. We read a lot of books. Michael Hers, who's kind of shuns the spotlight, is very attractive. He's seen every movie you can imagine, and he's watching them actively during COVID, too. The classics. We talk about Ernst Lubitsch and Howard Hawks and John Ford and all that. But he just doesn't show off. He does not like publicity, doesn't like that aspect of it. So I took over that part of it as kind of the face of trauma, Uncle Lloydie.
Uncle Lloydie, that's right.
And but Michael, he's a great director, but he lost enthusiasm for getting up at 4 a.m. and making sure the porta potties are there and that nobody gets run over by a truck. And it's not that much fun for him. So
I can understand it getting taxing.
Yeah, he stopped doing it around the Waitress. But he's a better director than I.
What was the last thing he directed? How long has it been since he's directed something?
Well, we did everything together, but we shared the credit anyway because I was in the Directors Guild. So whenever they put me on charges, I would say I used another name, Samuel Weil. And Michael Hers, and I would say, I'm like David O. Selznick. I'm a strong producer, and I tell the director Michael Hers what to do. But we would do the stuff together, and then eventually, when we became successful, I quit the Directors Guild and signed my name to the films. And they never could get me. They put me up, and they tried to kick me out numerous times. And finally, I resigned from the Directors Guild, and my somewhere in the files, they have my resignation letter right after Troma's War, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I suggested that maybe instead of crucifying their own members, maybe they ought to have a few black people. And I put it in my first book. I have a footnote about maybe have some females in the Directors Guild. And in the book, I make the joke. The book was written in 1994, and I make the joke in a footnote that good news, whereas they used to have 0.5% female directors, the big improvement now, it's up to 1.5%. I mean, they're doing better. They're doing better now, but
sure.
no thanks to the unionists, thanks to the black people raising their fists and the women kicking ass.
Yeah, and as we've seen, progress with that stuff can be slow and arduous.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. I mean, this Black History Month is a good thing, really. I mean, when you think of what Miles Davis, who was rich, his father was loaded, and he still they couldn't go into a white section in a store. And I watched something about Marian Anderson. And the male Marian Anderson, whose name I can't remember, who actually I had not heard of, who was making $250,000 a year in the 30s. Major. It's like $3 million today, at least.
Yeah.
And he and his wife and little 5-year-old kid accidentally went into the white section of a shoe store, and the cops came in and beat the crap out of him. And he's like, he's like famous, world famous. Yeah. So, you think about that, and Jesus, and there's another interesting thing. The Virgin Island woman who made that wonderful speech, one of the managers, she's a congressperson from the Virgin Islands. Instead of saying history, she calls it herstory, which I thought was wonderful. Mm. But she points out what a mistake Abe Lincoln made. He let all those fuckers who were Trumps in the 1860s. Right, he let all the leaders of the insurrection go home so they could raise havoc on the former slaves and create Jim Crow and all that shit. And I to me that I did, because I grew up, everybody said, "Oh, Lincoln, he's so wise. He didn't put anybody in jail or punish them. But he made a mistake." She's right.
Well, and if you look at it historically, Reconstruction, the period of history that happened right after the Civil War, was as bad as it was because of that very reason. Like Andrew Johnson, I think was the
from the South
guy that succeeded him. Yeah,
he too got impeached.
But my point is that exactly what you're saying, that if Lincoln had pursued justice more against the South after the fact, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, all those things would not have happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's the fact that they gave them carte blanche to basically go back and do whatever they wanted.
Terrorized. I mean,
terrorized,
I mean, Jim Crow, terrorized, lynchings. I mean, I'm old enough. I mean, I and again, my grandmother heard King. She lived uptown. She heard King's speech at Riverside.
Wow.
Anyway, that was a great speech about how the Vietnam War was basically genocide on black people. And the New York Times bombed it. The New York Times eviscerated the speech. And he was right on. Mm-hmm. Holy fuck. It's just awful. I feel guilty that I haven't done more. But what are you going to do? I'm a narcissist. It's all about me.
Everybody has to fight their battles in the way that they are best suited to do that. And you're doing yours through filmmaking. And like we've said, like Troma has these messages, even though they're not preachy movies, but they have underlying social themes that you can't ignore. And it has to be movies like Troma films to push those kinds of messages. You can't make quiet little vanilla paste movies and try to push a message. It has to be a movie like Troma where you're literally punching people in the face.
Well, that's sort of the way I see it. But Marian Anderson didn't see it that way, and a lot of great people who made changes. Henry Aaron, right? People threw Hank Greenberg. People used to throw pork chops at him because he was Jewish in Yankee Stadium, in baseball stadiums. Mm-hmm. But he proudly, he didn't punch people. He didn't. She had her own way of pushing, and it was a good one. It was just as good as Malcolm X, who got, of course, a bullet in his head, as did King.
Terrible.
Terrible. Yeah, really, and the worst. And we should get off that topic. I mean, really, it's just horrendous, horrible, horrible.
Well, yeah, but it's also factual.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, and that's the thing is that like my parents are both very Southern. and both very evangelical Christian Southern people as well. So I've been raised with the idea that I was raised with the idea that you don't talk about things like that. You don't bring it up. You don't mention it. That's not polite conversation. And I think one of the reasons that trauma means so much to me personally is because, you do talk about that shit because that's how you expose it. That's how you fight it.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because our slogan for 46 years or 45 years was movies of the future. Take death by temptation. Pretty much up to that point, and I put Spike Lee aside because he's great, and he's way ahead of everybody. But what were the black movies? Superfly, and they're good. Shaft.
Right, Shaft.
But Death by Temptation, A, it's a comedy. It's hilarious. B, it's subtext is AIDS. It's Samuel Jackson's first movie. It's all black people, but they're like, you laugh at the movie, not because they're black. You laugh at them because it's a funny movie with people who are just like you and me. They just happen to look different. And that's what Michael Hers and I saw. And we put in a shitload of money for us. We don't have any money. Yeah. So, and that was way ahead of Boys from the Hood. And we came out too soon. Had we done a year later, after Boys from the Hood, we couldn't get it into any video stores because they were afraid the black people would come in and burn the stores down. We didn't have too much trouble with theaters because the theater could always return the print and close the movie and bring in a Disney movie. But when you sell to a video store, they buy the VHS tapes.
Copy.
So they don't want to take any chances. They don't want to sit there with 100 VHS tapes and needless to say, nobody ever burned down any video stores.
Of course
at least no black people did. Maybe a couple of Jews, but
Troma has always served this rebellious part of film, like we've been talking about. I mean, what do you think is Troma's place now, as like Hollywood gets bigger and bigger with giant CGI-driven intergalactic extravaganzas? More money's being poured into Hollywood films than ever before. Do you think it's more important now for Troma to like have that place as its rebellious, independent film studio?
Well, Michael Hers and I have had almost 50 years of total freedom. We've produced and enabled a lot of great young new talent, and we've produced, in my opinion, a body of work that's wonderful. It's great, and I don't think, in the fullness of time, there is any way that anybody can fault us in any fucking way. I mean,
I agree.
I
fucking agree.
It was really not.
The drive-ins now, drive-ins are open. They're calling us for a Toxic Event. How old is that movie? 35 years old? Class of Newcomb High, same. I don't see them calling for the Paramount movies from 1985.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody's watching Romancing the Stone in a drive-in right now.
Well, I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. But, it's pretty... I think movies are classics. It just takes time. Is word of mouth. The biggest weapon we have are the word of mouth. People talk to each other. And eventually a movie like Combat Shock, Buddy Giovanazzo's masterpiece, which we executive produced. It's the darkest movie you will ever see. And when it came out, nobody got it. But in the fullness of time, people look at that. It's a masterpiece. And
I remember Combat Shock.
It's all about post-war, what do you call it? PTSD.
PTSD, yeah.
PTSD. I mean, it's amazing. That movie is never going to fade with time.
Right. And I feel that way about Toxic Avenger too. We touched on this a little bit earlier, where even if somebody's completely unaware of Troma Studios, Troma movies, they recognize Toxic Avenger.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can remember specifically as a child, because I was born in 81, so I was a kid, like a small child, when Toxie came out.
2 years old. Oh no, three years old.
Yeah, I was 3 years old. So I think I saw it around 5 years old.
Wow.
I think I walked in.
My God.
It was playing somewhere, and I walked in on it. But I remember giggling and laughing at Toxie, not being afraid of it, giggling like this guy is silly and adorable, and I love him. Like not it's a scary monster.
Indeed, when we were filming on location in New York, and Toxie and I would be, we'd walk from the place. We didn't have honey wagons. We'd usually get a store next door to the set or somebody's apartment where the actors could change and go to the bathroom. So when he and I would walk to the set, the kids in the neighborhood, they'd run after him, little kids. And I knew there that the whatever Jenny Aspinall had designed was cute. It was with the big teeth. It suddenly hit me. He's got this great smile. He's he's wearing a tutu and he's got a mop.
Yeah.
A mop, what's to be scared of?
It's perfect. And he really exemplifies everything about Troma. We embrace the love of the sloppy, gloppy monster who's not even a monster. He represents us. He's the everyman who's fighting for the downtrodden.
That's exactly right. I feel like the underdog.
And there's a lot of you, Lloyd, I think, in Toxic Avenger. I mean, assuming you feel some connection to that character personally.
My wife says that the Toxic Avenger is the story of my life, from Toxie through number 4 and beyond. It's me. She can go on for quite a deconstruct those movies and other things very much to show my own soul in those movies. But
and do you think we're ever going to get another Toxic Avenger movie? Citizen Toxie is probably one of my favorite Troma films, period.
I think that's the best Toxie movie.
I love that one.
I like the first one, but
was there ever going to be a 5?
We wrote a Jeremy Neuberger, whose documentary about crazy right-wing television host. I can't remember. Morton Downey, a very funny documentary. He wrote we hired him and he showed it at Troma Dance Film Festival. But he wrote a really good first draft. But now we're not supposed to do any. We're not supposed to do any new Toxic Avenger movies because of the deal with Legend.
That makes sense because they have the rights for the Toxic Avenger remake. So tell us a little bit about Troma Now. We've got the full Troma streaming platform that people can subscribe to. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you for asking, because that's our 5 years ago when we discerned that YouTube and Amazon were starting to squeeze the balls of independent artists. They keep lowering what they pay, and they keep censoring and asking artists, they're asking us to change our titles because there might be a word that's upsetting to somebody that triggers somebody. If you're an artist, you're not going to change your title.
Right.
Maybe. I would rather not, unless it's totally obscure. We did change Alfred Packer to Cannibal the Musical. We did do that, but I didn't know who Alfred Packer was. And if I don't know who Alfred Packer was, I don't think anyone outside of Colorado. I think Cannibal the Musical. Hey, it's a musical. That's probably
I
Think
Cannibal the Musical exemplifies the movie better.
Plus there's an off-Broadway. There's a road show, off-Broadway musical that runs around the country of Cannibal the Musical too. So it worked out. But the point is, I've done a documentary, a 10-minute, if you want to see it, called Independent Artists versus Corrupt Cartel. It's on the free Troma channel.
We'll find the link for that, and we'll post that link on our website in the X-Files section so our listeners can look at that as well.
But we moved all our movies. YouTube, we had 800 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And one day we woke up and YouTube, after 10 years, YouTube canceled the channel. They took it down.
Wow.
Community standards. But it's okay for Netflix to advertise, to have pedophile artwork for movies and to show QAnon and Arabs cutting people's heads off for real. You can find a lot of that stuff, but But anyway, our fans saved the day. They came up with a hashtag free Troma's free channel. And 2 days later, the channel was restored. But Michael was furious, and he took all the movies off it and moved them all over to Troma Now.
Fantastic.
But the free channel still has a lot of political statements and short things and music videos. It's still pretty good stuff. But you can find these documentaries. There's also one about the Cannes Film Festival and how it has gone from festival to fascism. So that's another place. Another place. I started going there in 1971, and the last time I went 2 years ago, we got, I didn't, but our volunteers and John Brennan. John Brennan got not beaten up, but roughed up. And they put his hands behind his back, and they took his camera and made him delete everything. And insane, just because we had Toxie and Kabuki Man. Troma's famous over there. The citizens of Cannes love us. The Cinémathèque Française in Paris has had 3 seasons of Troma movies, retrospectives. Mm-hmm. We're like the underground Jerry Lewis over there, or Mickey Rourke. Yet the festival felt suddenly after almost 50 years that no Troma. They wouldn't even let one of our team from America. He was wearing a T-shirt walking down in front of the main theater outside in the street, and they told him, "No, you can't. You have to go. You have to get out and change your T-shirt."
Wow.
But meanwhile, Disney's running around in masks and swords and guns, advertising Pirates of Caribbean. No problem. And they're in that little documentary. Mm-hmm. See it, from independent artists versus corrupt cartels. Both that one and the I'm sorry, from festival to fascism, mm-hmm. and independent artists versus corrupt cartels. They're only about 10 minutes. But John Brennan has a big piece of the documentary. He also created Kabuki Man's Cocktail Corner, which we
talked to him a little bit about that.
Does very well. People love it.
He said he got a chance to play Toxie in not only some of the stuff at the studios, but on some of the web content as well.
Yes, indeed.
I think the VR one, right?
Yes.
Like it was the first VR experience. He played Toxie in the first VR.
Well, Zach Amico also. Zach Amico played Toxie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it your daughter that produced that, the VR one?
I think John. No, I think that was John.
Because the only reason I ask is I know that it's sort of a family affair at this point at Troma now, right? Like at least one of your daughters is involved in.
Charlotte, our youngest daughter, shot about half of Return to Nukem High, Volume 2, mm-hmm. and she played Audrey, the little cute girl in Terra Firma. And Lily Hayes has written a couple of series that are on our Troma Now and YouTube. But she has her own. She's sold a series to NBC Comedy and cool. She and Charlotte have been working on a big documentary kind of about our family. My wife being very mainstream and debutante, and being
you
a
being
slob.
And I've always loved that relationship between you two, because you guys both love film and you approach it from such different trajectories. Has that ever caused a lot of conflict, or has it been really rewarding when you're able to collaborate creatively together on things?
Usually it goes something like, you've gone too far, you're not going to get into North by Northwest, whatever it is. And she's right, but it's art. So, and I do take her, she's very smart, my wife.
I just love how Troma's a family business now. And it just goes to reiterate how much freedom you guys have and are able to maintain. Troma has always been about freedom. This is something you've brought up several times through the interview. You started the entire studio for the freedom to make whatever the hell you guys wanted to make. And now you feel like you've gotten to a place where you have even more freedom to make whatever the hell you make. And you've been set up with Troma Now with a distribution network where you can put out whatever the hell you want.
Well, Troma Now is very good. I hope you could promote it a bit.
Absolutely.
It's small, but anyone who's subscribed, the first month is free, by the way. So you can see about 1,000 movies, music videos, shorts. We have comic books. We have Tromette collectible photographs, documentaries. We've got the 4 or 5 feature-length making of Poultry Guys, Citizen Toxie, Terrible. I mean, it's a wonderful channel. Very, very niche, mm-hmm. but our fans love it. The problem is nobody knows about it, and we have to rely on word of mouth. So anything you can do to spread the joy. It's about 5 years old. It's doing well enough, so we're expanding now and bringing more power to it, more ability to get onto the Roku and the other stuff. So
right now it's available online website?
It's only available at watch.troma.com.
Yep, I'm a member.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much.
For sure. As soon as I found out it was a thing, I said,
"Oh, thanks so much."
And everything that JB's a member of, I'm automatically a member of because I get his logins.
Because he has all of my logins.
Good.
Yeah.
But we'll be putting links to Troma Now and all of that other stuff up on the website for people to check out, because it's an incredible streaming site, and it's the only place to get a lot of these really hard to find videos and a lot of these really hard to find movies. And I'm sure there's a good amount of the Troma catalog that has yet to be released on, say, a Blu-ray or digital format until now.
Yeah, you're right, because it costs money to digitize, and we have to kind of do it out of right now during COVID. cupboard is bare, shall we say.
Yeah. Not to sidetrack a little bit, but we talked about Shakespeare shitstorm and how important Shakespeare is to you. And of course, we brought up Romeo and Juliet. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about how Shakespeare is an important influence on Troma in a weird way. I mean, I'm assuming James Gunn must appreciate Shakespeare as well, since he wrote Romeo and Juliet.
James Gunn and we knew more about Shakespeare. You know, he has a master's from Columbia. He had written a novel before he worked for my assistant. And
well, and you can even see that in his Marvel stuff, right? Like you can see that wit and that intellect in that, in the way that it's
absolutely written. He's got plenty to say and so much knowledge. And I look at Baz Luhrmann's Romeo. In fact, the Museum of Modern Art played three. They had a Breaking Bard month of Shakespeare movies, and they had 3 Romeo and Juliet movies. Zeffirelli's 1968, where it's a tearjerker. It's very emotional. But it also, for me, had the at least when I watched it in 1968. If I had had a remote control, I could have. You get a brief glimpse of Juliet's melon-heavy breast. What was her name? Jeez, I forgot her name. Very pretty. But and then Romeo and Juliet, and they put Romeo and Juliet at 4 p.m. The place was packed. Museum of Modern Arts. The guard told me they had never turned away so many people.
Wow.
4 p.m. on Saturday, and then 6 o'clock came Zeffirelli, and not much. And then you would think that the Baz Luhrmann Shakespeare, but didn't fill up.
But the fans spoke, and what the fans want is the Troma Shakespeare.
Well, also, the real truth was the members at the Museum of Modern Art are people of my age, that are bourgeois white people, and they don't get to see much hot monkey love. So my suspicion is
and there you have it.
Because they came, these old people came to kind of, get a little. I mean, the audience was kind of half and half, and actually the musical draws a similar audience. When it played in New York for a year, it drew both the little old ladies who go to matinee with the blue hair, and people with tattoos and barbells and.
It tickles me to imagine some old blue-haired lady being like, "We're gonna have to reschedule Bridge, Gladys."
Yeah, they loved it.
There's hot monkey love at the Met today. I'm sorry.
And that's what you've said it before, that the fans are the lifeblood of Troma. And there's like you said, it's niche, but there's 2 kinds of people. The people who look at a Troma movie and are absolutely appalled and have no idea what they've gotten themselves into, and the initiated who fucking crave that stuff.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
There's really not a lot of middle ground there.
We look much bigger than we are because, indeed, we are fan-fueled. Fans make us look like a big corporation. And they also fan out, if you'll pardon the pun, and
I will
get theaters to play our movies. And they, we have probably 1 million people every month who visit some website or social platform on which we put news. So, we have a limited following. I guess it's a classic cult movie studio.
Right. The fans love it. And you've got 2 of those fans right here. We appreciate so much of what you've done with Troma, Lloyd, and the films that you've produced. There's literally nothing else like it in existence.
Yeah, and we really appreciate your time, man.
It's wonderful. I usually, Tom may have said half hour, but I'm having a great time. And you guys know movies so much, so it's such a pleasure. Well, that's great because a lot of the mainstream reporters, I don't think they've heard of Buster Keaton or, and certainly a lot of the podcasters, you can't really they don't know that much. They really don't. They haven't read books. They haven't, you guys obviously have seen thousands of movies.
Well, thank you so much, Lloyd. That really means a lot.
But I think a lot of people just don't read, they don't read books. Too many people think that movie history began with Star Wars. And surely Lucas is a genius, but there was people like Chaplin and Fritz Lang and Samuel Fuller and
F.W. Murnau and George Millet.
Yeah, exactly.
What I was going to say to your point earlier is I think that Jordan and I are both very lucky to be part of a generation, the last generation really, that grew up on home video and that grew up on, and I know that like home video is so important to what Troma is as well. But we, specifically, like I am from that exact generation that grew up on home video. And in the same way that I got turned on to Trauma because of it, I also got turned on to Buster Keaton. I also got turned on to, fucking Citizen Kane. Yep. And that shit. And it makes me sad sometimes when I see this younger generation of kids now that don't have that. They don't have that access to like a Blockbuster video.
They don't have bookstores either, right? The mom and pop VHS store replaced paperback bookstores. There used to be, you used to go in and browse around, and for a couple of bucks you'd buy, James Bond or whatever,
And I consider myself lucky because I live right down the street from maybe one of the last of these places where it's a bookstore and I can still rent a movie from that place.
How cool is that?
How great is that? Yeah.
It is very cool.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Lloyd, thank you so much for donating your time and talking with us today. It's been so much fun.
Well, I've had a blast, and you guys are fan-toxic.
Ooh. Thank you, Uncle Lloydie.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Bye. 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 Bye.
Well, what'd you think? Are you as just smiling from ear to ear as we are?
There's so much fucking fun talking to Lloyd. That was awesome.
Like we said, I think we said this on last week's episode or on the secret episode somewhere. Mm-hmm. We were only supposed to talk to Lloyd for a half an hour. Yep. Like we were allotted a half an hour of time, and it ended up like he just did not want to stop.
Yeah, we just were having too much fun, man. Yeah. Honestly, really, really were.
And like I have never felt as affirmed as I did when Lloyd Kaufman was like, "You guys know your shit." I like almost peed myself.
Yeah, man. So like we said at the beginning of the episode, we have a full extra half hour of stuff we talked about with Lloyd. Yep. That the only way you guys can hear that is by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Camp Nightmare and signing up for our exclusive secret episodes.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on both Twitter and Instagram. We're not telling you what to do.
We would never dream of telling you what to do. But if you were to choose to do it,
if you wanted to,
that's something you could do.
You could do Instagram and Twitter.
You could also go over to our website if you chose, and go to our X-Files section for all the external links to all the cool stuff we talked about. Yeah. And also, if you chose, not telling you what to do, you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a really nice review. That's something that really helps us out. And hey, if you send us a screenshot of that really nice review, we'll make sure we can send you a scare package. You get some free stickers and some good stuff.
And normally I don't do this at the end of the episode, but because Lloyd was so cool, I definitely want to plug a couple things for Lloyd.
Absolutely.
And Trauma. So don't forget to be on the lookout for #Shakespeare Shitstorm. Mm-hmm. Definitely worth the watch. Definitely worth paying whatever you have to pay to watch it. Definitely head over to watch.trauma.com. Check out Trauma now. There's a lot of stuff at the free level there that you can watch, but for $4.99 a month, access to everything Trauma's ever done, like that's a steal.
Yeah, Trauma now is great, and the first 30 days are free on that, so it's a really good deal. And honestly, there's a lot of fun stuff on there. Yeah, and it's just there's a lot of obscure stuff on there, so it's kind of a lot of fun just digging around and finding the most random thing that you've never heard of and just clicking play.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow Trauma and Lloyd on Instagram. I'll tell you right now, Lloyd's Instagram is fucking awesome. He is so much more politically active than you think he is.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you guys so much once again for coming to hang out with us. Mm-hmm. We will see you next week. I'm JB.
And I'm Jordan.
Camp Nightmare out.